All right.
Let's bring in our panel. Tara Servatius is the host of the Tara Show on 98.9, the voice of the Carolinas. And Hogan Gidley is a former Trump campaign national press secretary. Chad Connelly is the former South Carolina GOP chairman. So, Chad, let me start with you. What's your gut telling you?
Well, I've been around the state, obviously, for the last few weeks, and I actually had Ralph Norman in some pastor meetings yesterday. We invited both candidates. I run a pastor network, and we were just trying to expose them to all the candidates. And Ralph came to 2 of the meetings. Darline wasn't able to make any of them, I guess, with a tight time frame. But anecdotally, it looks like Ralph has the nod, the edge, at least right now. I know that the campaign dropped the late night poll from Robert Connelly, my friend with Trafalgar, and it was neck and neck. And I believe this can be neck and neck. Anecdotally, though, it seems like Ralph's running around the state for the last 9 or 10 months campaigning for governor may be the edge. I think the thing to ask is who turns out in August on a hot August day in a special election. I think it's the ardent conservatives, grassroots folks who care about South Carolina the most that show up at every election. But I think ultimately we're going to find out, was President Trump's last minute visit on Friday night the difference maker or not?
Yeah, exactly. Earlier this morning, we spoke with former Virginia Senator George Allen, and he said that this runoff between Graham and Norman will be much closer than people realize. And he also questioned just how much weight President Trump's endorsement will carry. Let's listen.
It's a tough decision for the Republican voters in South Carolina. There's emotion to it. There's their heart. And then there's their head. And I think it's going to be a really close election. I will say one thing about South Carolinians, especially the longtime ones, is they don't like people from the federal government or outside telling them what to do. There's that independent nature. And it's hard to say what endorsements from outside will do, although obviously President Trump is popular.
Yeah, Hogan, do you agree with the senator there? And also, what does it mean if Graham doesn't win?
Well, listen, Chad knows this better than most because he was the chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party, and I was executive director of the Republican Party long ago. And we understand we pick presidents. We take pride in the fact that people come through this state in presidential primaries and they have to kiss all the babies. They have to go to all the barbecue joints. And so we don't like someone that's perceived to be or actually is kind of coronated, i.e. Darline Graham. However, a lot of people do understand the situation that exists because Senator Graham, someone a lot of people in South Carolina love, passed away, and she filled that void and took on the mantle and is willing to serve. So there's something to be said there. But we also don't like people who've been in office for a long time, like Ralph Norman, who keeps saying sentences that start with, "I'm going to do." Well, why haven't you done? You've been there 20 years. So they both have strengths and they both have weaknesses. Darline has a great turnout apparatus because she has the Lindsey Graham mechanics behind her, and they are elite. But Ralph Norman, as Chad just said, just ran for governor. So he's been around the state as well. Yeah. Momentum behind both candidates. But as Chad also pointed out, who's going to turn out on a day like this? It's going to be the ardent GOP, the folks who are dyed-in-the-wool conservative. And a lot of those folks, by history being our guide, aren't big fans of Lindsey Graham. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen here, but this is going to be a close race. Both candidates have been in front of the people, and they're going to get their chance to decide today.
So, Tara, I try to look at the numbers as quickly as they come out and try to, do a little fortune telling and see what's happening. So with the absentee statistics that came in from the early voting, we had the highest turnout in these areas: Greenville, Charleston, Beaufort, Anderson, Lexington, and Spartanburg. Much higher turnout than other areas. Are those all in one specific area of the state, or do they give you any indication of the enthusiasm for the candidates for the race?
3 of those are in the upstate. It's called the upstate of South Carolina. They're big population centers: Anderson, Greenville, and Spartanburg. That is the very conservative region, much more conservative than the coast. And that's why everybody's watching it right now to see what happens. This is very much a turnout competition between the conservative upstate and the coast. And people are keenly aware of that here, that a very liberal Lindsey Graham machine, it's very liberal on the ground. It runs our legislature. It keeps conservatives locked out of politics. defeats them in the primaries with a boat of cash. There's a lot of resentment in the upstate about that. And there are a lot of people who see this as their opportunity to right that ship and put the upstate in charge here. And another factor, look, I've run campaigns in North Carolina statewide. I've followed politics in both states, North and South, for 20 years. I have never, ever seen $1 million dropped by Democrats in a primary race. Democrat PAC with 100% Democrat donors, no Republican donors, donors who gave to Kamala Harris, dropped $1 million into this primary for Darline Graham. And what was so astonishing is they did it in their own name, in the Invest for Tomorrow PAC name. It's right here, right now on my phone.
Wow.